Hi. Hey, Mario Duarte, I'm the CISO of Aembit. Just really glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to speak to you today as a believer in the product, okay? But I'm also going to walk you through my experience as a practitioner, as a CISO practitioner at Snowflake, and how we arrived at Aembit in the end. But I also want to do another disclaimer. These are my opinions, my experiences. I don't speak for my former employers. Fair enough? And so today I'm talking to you not as an impartial CISO, but as somebody who's a believer in the Aembit product because of the experience. 20 plus years in the industry. I know I don't look it. And 9+ years at Snowflake. I was the first CISO of Snowflake, first security person, helped build a team to 150 people, and stepped down in 2023 before some of the events that happened last year with some of our security, some of our customers at Snowflake. So, before I go into this whole discussion, is everybody familiar with H Partners and what they do? Well, they do a survey as well. And it's an annual survey where they ask a bunch of CISOs what their salaries, the compensation structure looks like, who they're reporting to as well. And one of the things that caught my eye was this thing about IAM. And in it, they said that CISOs are responsible for the user. I'm gonna go user and then I'll go NHI, but user IAM space, responsible. So for all the CISO and security practitioners here, can you raise your hand and tell me that that's you? You are responsible for IAM? How many of us are accountable? In other words, there's a security incident that happens in the user community, user credentials. Somebody's responsible for those users for adding them and removing them, but we're accountable. We're the ones holding the stuff at the end. Can I get a show of hands if that's who you are? So one of the things I think I think the question was not posed well on this survey. When I speak to a lot of our colleagues in the CISO community and the security community, most will say that they're accountable, not responsible, but accountable. I want you to keep that idea, keep that thread through my presentation, because I think that's one of the challenges that we are facing, especially in the NHI space, right? Non-human identity space, workload, automated workloads. Because oftentimes it's not the security teams building these applications. We're not the ones setting up these NHIs. It's actually the DevOps, the engineering team, the IT group. Does that resonate with everybody? Mm-hmm. Great. So, before I go into the whole how did we get to Aembit, I'm going to go back 5-6 years. And one of the challenges we were faced with was to try to understand how do we reduce a major security data breach occurring at Snowflake. Right? And where do we get that? How do we find out? What are people thinking about? How do we reduce that? And 5-6 years ago, which nobody's surprised, 88%, 90% of security data breaches, even today, somebody keep me honest, are a direct result of human errors, human mistakes, misconfigurations that happen in the environment. And by the way, the more complex the environment, the more likely human errors are going to happen, right? And if you look at the top 5-10 mistakes, human errors or negligence, you'll see that some of them, there's a common theme. Credentials, passwords, phishing attacks, right? So it's a lot about identity and credentials. So we got rid of passwords. Most locations, we got rid of user passwords because we felt that that was a real big problem. They're easily phishable. Everybody could, I don't need to go on a rant about how those things can be complicated. But we also did so by getting rid of passwords, we use enclave technology. I'm sure you're all familiar, right? More modern technologies, laptops and phones, smart devices have an enclave chip. It's like a roach motel. The roach go in, but they never get out, right? So you put these identifiers like in certificates as an example. But it also allowed us to identify the laptops. And we can say that laptop belongs to our company. That's not a user or an external laptop. And then we can also identify and tie it to the user who's using that laptop. And then we implemented MFA 502, and you heard some of our guest speakers talking about MFA 502 not being helpful, being good, but not bulletproof, and that is correct. Once you get past your IDP, you authenticate yourself, you're gonna get a session ID from an application, okay? And unless the application's doing global auth with the IDP, it doesn't matter if you reset the password and not use it in the IDP, there's still a session ID from the application that's living in that browser on that computer. And these is how you get, you get an extension on the browser, the attacker will grab those credentials, the session ID, and here you go. That's where MFA 502 is not gonna help you. Nothing's gonna help you at that point. But we also enforce things such as policies. In other words, we want to make sure that the laptop not only just belonged to us, but was it patched? Was it patched at the level that we wanted it? And what it also is it running, your EDR tools, your CrowdStrikes of the world, and is it working? And if it's not working, don't give them the credentials, don't let them advance go, don't let them get authenticated until they fully get patched, and their CrowdStrike's working. Does that sound familiar with everybody here? Have most of us done this already? Okay. So, why are we doing this for NHIs? If this works, and by the way, we did find that it worked. Our results show that it did work. Because we could see a lot of the former attacks we were noticing were not getting, we weren't seeing the success rate, period. Because it made it difficult for the attackers, right? Attackers, unless you're a nation state, cyber criminals are opportunists. They're looking for the low-hanging fruit. They're there to make money, right? But there were some unexpected benefits when we did this deployment, this model, across the whole company. We started getting unsolicited emails from the employee population. Usually, when security people hear unsolicited emails, people are bitching, complaining, what are you doing? But this was different. People actually were thanking us for getting rid of passwords, for using biometrics, for making their lives easier. In fact, emails were going all the way to the CEO, my boss's boss, thanking them for how productive we were being for them. Think about passwords. We've freaking changed. We have these password policies that mandate our user community to remember X number of characters, complexity of characters, and then we have to change them every 60, 90 days. Imagine how that is for non-human identities. If we were having problems with humans, and by the way, we use password managers, my goodness, I gave them everything to make it easy for them. But still people were complaining once we used passwords. So the benefit, what we learned from it, and I wasn't expecting this, and here's for all you vendors, security vendors, including myself, try to find a security tool that makes life, not just security, improves security, but makes lives easier for our user communities, for our developers. The other thing we found out was, the whole thing about defense in depth concept, it's kind of a multiplier effect. Think about it from an economics perspective. It's a multiplier effect. How so? Well, once your security tool integrates with your customer's existing security tools, there's a huge security benefit. It makes it harder for an attacker to exploit certain things. If your system is patched, if your system's running the right EDR, if your system is having X with your existing security tooling, it improves everything. More often than not, all us vendors go and ask our security customers to rip and replace. And I think that's the wrong concept. Make sense? And then, after we took away all that user community, by the way, user errors, you know how you get user errors with passwords? 60 to 65% of our help desk tickets at Snowflake, before we got rid of passwords, before implementing this, guess what? It was all about resetting passwords. Or it was about, I can't log into this, or I can't log into that. So we were generating a ton of noise in the system. I'm not even talking about our SIM, right? So, by the way, Snowflake when I was there, we used our own dog food, as I like to say. We used Snowflake as our database to analyze all the traffic that was going on, all the behavioral things. We had a lot of insights into how our employees, how our applications were working or accessing things. So we began once the noise reduction occurred because of the user not longer needing to use passwords, something started happening. We started noticing NHI problems. These shared credentials, these tokens that have been there in the environment the whole time, they've been there all this time, but they were covered by all the other noise. And so it's great for all you, for NHI IGAs, look, let me just say this, IGA, NHI IGA, you need to have it, you need to have visibility. Can fix the problem if you don't have visibility into it. It's really important. So I'm not here to argue against that. I'm also not arguing about authorization. You have to have the right authorization. You need to. But there's something that's changing. Monitoring and alerting alone is not going to help us. Why? Well, once we started noticing secrets getting put in GitHub or GitLab, in the public GitHub or GitLab, do you know how quickly those credentials are gained? I mean, an attacker gains access to those credentials. Anybody want to take a guess? An hour? 30 minutes? 1 minute. 1 minute. So I want you to think about that. All the monitoring and alerting we have, which we did, Snowflake, we saw those things. How quickly can we go and change it? How quickly we can rotate? And I heard somebody said 5 days. One of our previous speakers said 5 days. I would argue 5 days is nice. It's longer, much longer. So we need to become more preventative. But in order to do that, we need to make devs' lives easier. I heard, by the way, training. I think training helps. But training doesn't help. By the way, we did training. We programmatically contacted the employee whenever they made a mistake. Says, hey, here's a policy. Don't do this. Do X. Got it. In order for training to work, the behavior, the training needs to occur within an hour of the event happening. Got it? If it takes 5, 10 days before the employee gets the training, after the event has happened, after the action, it's worthless. And I'm not making this up. You just look it up in the data, look at the science of behavior, people behavior. Has anybody read Atomic Habits book? Right? And I'll add another one. Any of you guys have kids and ladies have kids? All right. So I have a teenager, 2 teenagers, and one of them is just a total messy person with her room. And every so often I'll go to her and I'll say, can you clean your room? And they clean it. It looks beautiful. You're happy. My goodness, I did a great job. What a great dad I am. 2, 3 days later, what happens? It's got to be messy. Okay? So with training, not only do you have to get it done quickly after the behavior has occurred, you also have to make it a habit. How many developers do you think have a habit of thinking about setting up the right credentials for their automated processes? Really, how many? So the key here is training helps, not disregarding it, but we need to make it easier. I've heard a lot of security practitioners here today talk about making it easier for the developers. And I asked you that question earlier, is IAM our responsibility or are we accountable? I think we're accountable, we're not responsible. That means we depend on our engineers, we depend on our developer colleagues, we depend on our IT colleagues. So we have to go tell them, hey, you need to go fix this. Look what you just did. So what do? They maybe do a Band-Aid, maybe they listen to you, or they say they do, and they'll fix it later. But they never fix the crux of the problem. Right? So I'm going to pass on because I got 5 minutes. So why are developers having this problem? The reality is it's freaking complex. Okay? If we were just dealing with one cloud provider, one account deployment or 2 deployments, maybe it would be easy. But the reality is now, it's multiple deployments, multiple SaaS applications. Complexity creates problems, mistakes, and human beings are going to do this. And developers, last time I checked, are human beings writing this sort of stuff that's going to create and generate problems over and over. And this is why we chose Aembit. Okay? Aembit got us out of the credential management. Get out of the credentials management. Get out of the password management. Get out of those secrets. Focus on the workload. Focus on the actual identity of the workload. And then you can ask the workload, Can I connect to my existing tooling, my existing applications, security tools? Let's say WIS, I know, and CrowdStrike, right? What if you can say to that workload, are you patched? Are you using WIS? Is your CrowdStrike working? Before it gets a credential. This is what Aembit can do. So it integrates with the existing security toolings that you have. It creates that user experience, but it applies it to the machine, to the workload. Secrets, we can help you with secrets. We talk about rotation, but hey, just remember this rotation statement. It's kind of like password policies. You gotta rotate every 60, 90 days or a year. It's gonna create problems. You need some form of automation. Aembit does that. From end to end, we'll take care of that. So, since I have a few more minutes, we don't have time anymore to be reactive. We need to be proactive. But if you're going to be proactive, we're going to need help from our developer friends. And if we're going to need help from our developer friends, we need to make it easier for them to integrate. Integrating is easy. You know what's hard? Maintenance. You also have to think about maintenance, right? Because you don't want to interrupt your developer community. You don't want to interrupt their work. And use your existing security. Mandate from your vendors, security vendors, mandate that they need to integrate with your existing security toolings to make it stronger. So when you go to the board, you can say, look, our investment we made is actually paying off even more now. Well, thank you, everybody.